All right, let's dive into a massive trade showdown between two global giants. We're talking about a dispute that literally put billions of dollars at risk, and it all kicked off with one pretty staggering number.
50%. Just let that sink in for a second. That's the number. In 2025, that was the absolutely crippling tariff the US slapped on most goods coming in from India. I mean, a move like that was basically unheard of, and it sent total shockwaves across the entire global economy.
So what exactly was this 50% tariff? Well, it was a massive U.S. import duty. The official reason given pointed to geopolitics, things like India's continued purchases of Russian oil. What's so wild is that this became the highest tariff the U.S. charged any of its major trading partners. The tension just shot through the roof almost overnight.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth do you even get to 50%? Well, it wasn't just one flat fee. It was actually built in layers. Think of it like this. They started with a 10% baseline duty. Okay, then they added another 15% on top of that, a reciprocal tariff. But the real knockout punch? That was a massive 25% punitive tariff, tied directly to those political issues. You put it all together, and you can see this wasn't just a tax. It was basically a financial weapon designed to hit hard.
And you know, this whole thing didn't just appear out of thin air. It escalated with, honestly, breathtaking speed. Let's take a look at the timeline, because it really shows you just how fast things spiraled out of control. Look at how fast this all happened. In April of 2025, you get the first announcement. By August 1st, a really hefty 25% tariff is already in place. But wait, they weren't finished. Less than a month later, on August 27th, they pile on another 25%. And boom, that's how we get to that crippling 50% total. The sheer speed of it all just created this incredible sense of crisis for Indian businesses.
And we have to be clear, this wasn't just some political squabble or a bunch of numbers on a page. No, this tariff had very real, very severe consequences for India's huge and growing economy.
$87 billion. This number right here just shows you the pure scale of what was at stake. That's the total value of what India was selling to the US every year. And suddenly, all of it was at risk.
And the impact was just massive. More than half, 55% of everything India sold to its biggest trading partner got hit by these new tariffs. Now, some critical things like pharmaceuticals were exempt, thank goodness, but the damage to the rest of the economy was just immense.
And you can see exactly who was on the front lines here. We're talking about major industries that employ millions and millions of people. Textiles, gems and jewelry, auto parts, leather goods. For them, costs basically doubled overnight. That makes it incredibly hard to compete on the world stage. The fallout for the whole economy was just as serious. Before all this, India's GDP growth was looking really healthy, forecasted at about 6.5%. But after the tariffs hit, those forecasts got slashed, dropping by as much as half a percentage point. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but for an economy the size of India's, that's a huge, huge hit.
So, with its back against the wall, what did India do? Did it just fire back with its own tariffs and launch an all-out trade war? Well, actually, no. They took a much different, much more strategic route.
So instead of just firing back, a tit-for-tat kind of thing, India decided to play the long game. They were really smart about it. They held off on retaliating and went straight for high-level diplomatic talks. At the same time, back home, they were busy supporting the industries that got hit the hardest and started looking for new markets to sell to. And they kept a really important card up their sleeve, the right to take this whole thing to the World Trade Organization.
And you know what? That cautious, diplomatic approach, it actually worked. In February of 2026, after months of all this tension, there was a major breakthrough. And here it is. This was the big moment. That crushing 50% tariff was slashed all the way down to 18%. The big punitive duty, gone completely. The reciprocal tariff, reduced. This was a massive de-escalation that literally brought entire industries back from the brink of disaster. You could feel the relief in India. Prime Minister Modi immediately came out and welcomed the deal. He talked about how it would benefit not just businesses, but the whole relationship between the two countries. It was seen as a huge diplomatic win.
But that win definitely came at a price. India had to give up a lot. This included things like moving towards zero tariffs on American goods, stopping all purchases of Russian oil, the very thing that started this whole mess, and a huge pledge to buy American, committing to over $500 billion in future purchases.
So, okay, the main crisis was over. But as you probably know, in the world of global trade, the story's never really over.
In fact, while the ink was still drying on that big agreement, a whole new conflict was already starting to bubble up, this time focused on one very specific industry.
And if you thought 50% was a crazy number, get a load of this one, 126%.
This was a whole new kind of tariff, a countervailing duty aimed right at Indian-made solar panels. The U.S. claimed that Indian companies were getting unfair government subsidies that hurt American businesses, so this massive duty was their way of trying to level the playing field. It just goes to show you, even after the big deal was done, these specific trade fights were far from over.
And this is where it leaves us, with a really big question, right? After India gave up so much to end one crisis, only to get hit with another one just days later, you have to wonder what's really going on here. Is this a partnership of equals, or is it something else? Maybe the beginning of a new kind of dependency. And that, right there, is really what this whole standoff is all about.